Good morning. Welcome to the Financial Pillars All About the Money podcast presented by Our Neutral Voices Media. Our show is all about helping our audience understand money, mindsets, and tap into the economic knowledge that builds financially secure individuals, families, and communities. So whether you're tuning into our show to learn about budgeting, building credit, investing, or starting your own business, we're here to break down the knowledge in a real and relatable way. Before we get started today, T, you want to bring us in with a prayer?
Sure, absolutely. Let's bow our heads. Dear Father God, I want to thank you so much for allowing all of us to get here unharmed, unscathed. Thank you so much for protecting us. I did understand that there was some severe weather that happened last night, and I just pray and thank you so much for protecting our loved ones and the people that we do care about. And I pray that you allow us to give our knowledge to all our viewers and listeners today so that they may take it with them and use it to help them better themselves. In your name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you for that. A little bit of intros today. I'm Ryan Leopard, private banker, Star Financial Bank.
JJ Foster, loan mortgage originator, Lake City Bank.
Ben, branch manager at Flagstone Bank.
Terrence, also a personal banker at Star Financial Bank.
That's awesome. Before we jump into our topic today, guys, wanted to break some news to you. Unfortunately, this will be my last day on the set with you guys. I will officially be resigning from my position as host of this show. So I haven't told anybody yet, but moving on to bigger and better things. So happy April Fool's Day.
Everyone in every room, man.
Where is this coming from?
Yeah. I was wondering how well that was going to go or not, if that'd be believable, if anybody remembered it was April Fool's Day or not. Yeah. I wouldn't have, except my kids told me last night they're going to wake me up today and play a prank on me. So
This is an interesting direction. Yeah.
But the fact that you said bigger and better thing, I was about to say, where you going, CNN?
moving on. Yeah. So jumping to our topic today, last week we kind of touched on money myths that kind of keep people down financially, and we brought up but didn't really dive into the topic of what effects do like race and cultural upbringing kind of play in our financial decisions as well. So let's kind of tackle that topic today, right?
Yeah, no question.
Yep. So what do you feel? Cultural, racial, what kind of upbringing background do you think kind of plays a role? Why do we feel that way?
I was going to say all the above. There's certain cultures and you know what? When we say cultures, obviously there's nothing across the board, but generally, if I come from a culture whose family didn't utilize banking, we don't know a lot about financing, there's not a lot I'm going to pass on to my children. Coincidentally, or there's other families whose kids, they're breaking it down. They teaching kids about banking and finance, really from the time they can talk or whatnot. I went out, I was talking to a group of middle school kids, and I asked people, I said, hey, who knows about banking? A couple hands went up. And I said, can you tell me about a checking and savings and what's the difference? And this kid, he raised his hand. He said, savings is where you put your money in the account, and that's money you don't touch because you don't want to spend it. And you're looking for the best interest rate that are out there while your money is being saved. He said checking is that's money where you have your transactions and you can get to it easy when you go to write checks. Now, I'm looking at the kid like, who is this kid? His classmates are looking at him like, who is this kid? But obviously, his family had laid a foundation for this young man and to be financially literate.
Or he remembered his JA teachings as well. Yeah. How old? What grade?
He was in sixth grade.
Sixth grade.
Yeah. So again, because that's what I said too. But the other gentleman in the room, again, no retention if they had the same class. But this young man, he was equipped.
Yeah. Ben, what about you? Where your financial morals, let's say, where do you attribute that to?
I would say upbringing. Just depending with how someone was brought up, kind of influences their financial behaviors. For example, so if someone grew up in a household where there's, like pretty much like there's the stability or affluence, or they tend to be more risky, or they're more open to financials just from that exposure. But at the same time, if someone grew up in a household where, for instance, there's scarcity of finance, then the person could always be influenced from that. And what that looks like is someone can become more frugal with maybe how they spend money. It can also be more aware of how they spend money, or more aware of things that they've been across, they grew up around, and then they tend to kind of most be scared of making decisions because, well, I remember in the past maybe I was around through scarcity, or I went through a particular situation where they didn't have enough, and that kind of can influence someone in their adulthood because they're just not used. Maybe it can instill fear or the ability to even take risk because they don't want to change what's particularly norm. But at the same time would be, if someone grows up in a household where money is talked about, there's risk taken around finances such as investments, there's conversations across the board, can influence them in a way that their mindset is more related toward taking risk. They're more open to the fact that they can maybe change careers because of the fact that they've been around that. They can invest because they've had conversations at the household where investments are being done. There's home ownership earlier on because they've been around that, and they've been part of the journey and things of that nature. And so either way, it does influence someone. The key thing would be, how does that really affect who we are as adult? I could say, for instance, in my most relatable way would be myself growing up. There was both. There was scarcity and abundance. And I can relate in a way where when we had scarcity, I saw my parent become more frugal or budgeting in a way that she really prioritized on what was important. And for instance, for us growing up, mom thought education was very important, and that's what she did. But during that time frame, that took away from things that we could have afforded on. How would that have impacted me as an adult would be just looking at how I was spending money, or how I was trying to buy things. I was more so not willing to take risk. I was more so not willing to buy things because I was scared of the fact that I can wake up tomorrow and not have enough.
When you say risk, what are you referring to? What do you mean by risk?
Yeah. So for instance, my risk would be I was scared to even invest because I have money in my savings account and all I thought about was not wanting to do anything with it. Or I was scared to buy something big because it just drew me back to a moment where I didn't have enough. And so it was more so a moment where, and again, it just relates to that particular upbringing, because would be if you're looking at your parent really being frugal, being mindful of the things that they're buying, and it's more so thinking about we have to have enough for another day. It puts me on that mindset because I'm always thinking, well, I have to have this. Now, as an adult, I became more aware of that, and how I more so dealt with it was just having conversations with myself and being open to the realistic of, well, Ben, like most of our reward system, and more planning and allocating funds for everything, because again, it can just take you in a different direction. And if we do not become aware of those things, especially the influence that money has had and behaviors around us as we were growing up, it can affect us as adults. The key thing would be just becoming aware of how that is affecting us and changing and figuring out a way to evolve with it.
Gotcha. Terrence, what about you?
In terms of cultural upbringing, I think there are two sides to each side, from the scarcity side and the abundance side. We are familiar with those more affluent people that do have that wealth built up. You have, on one hand, the individuals that do like to have the flashy cars, the flashy houses, the flashy items to physically and externally represent that they are rich and that they have money. And then you also have those other individuals that, once again, still have the abundance of wealth, but still live like the average common person. So I think it comes in terms of mentality, that each person has their own belief of what represents being rich is like. Culturally, you can be rich and not live like a rich person. As JJ has said several times before, you can still live under your means and still live comfortably, even if you have an abundance of funds. But at the end of the day, if you're spending more than anything that you're bringing in, how are you ever supposed to build a legacy? But again, if that's not your long-term goal to build a legacy, what's the point of doing that? I forgot the the guy's name that was on here before that was telling us about how he was working with somebody that was always making a lot of money. But then when it came in terms of sitting down with them talking about retirement, they didn't really have anything saved up for their retirement. So there was no such thing as an earlier retirement because when you were younger, you blew all your wealth then. So now that you're getting older in age, now it's time for you to save, but you wanted to be flashy. You wanted to have the nice cars, the nice things. Now you have nothing to look forward to in the future. And the same thing on the scarcity side, depending on how you were brought up culturally, for those individuals that there was always enough. There were always enough resources, but there weren't an abundance of resources. You live your life thinking, okay, this is enough. This is what I'm capable of having at this specific time. In the future, what do I want for myself? Do I just want enough or do I want enough plus some? So I think that mindset is a big influence on how people live their lives, especially financially, versus those people that also do live in that scarcity category, but are always chasing to be like the Jones. And I think the other thing that also goes hand in hand with that is short-term gratification. Okay, well, you penny pinch here, you penny pinch there, you pay your bills there, you sacrifice here. Okay, there's a brand new Rolex that you've been wanting, so you go spend it. But at the end, how many steps backwards do you have to take before you're able to take steps forwards again? So I mean, it's definitely culturally. You do have those individuals that love spending money, they love being flashy, and then you have other people that realize that there's not a need behind it. But also at the same time, when you bring up the racial aspect of it, even if you just take white and black people, for example, even if we just go back like 150 years, black people are always held to a completely different standard. We had to present ourselves as if we were just as good as white people, even if we had the same things as them.
When you say held to a different standard by your own community?
Yes.
Or
well, I mean,
by-
in a
yeah.
sense, if we're speaking historically, black people had their own communities, but there were also integrated communities as well, even though they still were not accepted, even if they still owned a nice house, they still owned a nice car, and they still had enough funds to present themselves as being a model citizen of society. We'll say that. At the end of the day, that upbringing is something that is passed down. It is something that they want to maintain. They want to maintain the picture that we have our stuff together. We are just as good as they are. And some of those people still have that same ideology today. Other people have rejected it and they live their lives the way that they see. But again, culturally and racially, they have both influenced people on how they spend their money financially and how they live their lives.
Racially, culturally, would we say those are kind of intertwined?
I would say
there?
they are intertwined a bit. I would not say 100%.
Yeah, gotcha.
And I was just gonna say, when you're talking family values, I guess a prime example would be there's some families who they say, "Hey, credit. We buy everything on credit. We can swipe our credit card. We're gonna live our life the way that we want to live. And hey, as long as we're paying, who cares? We can pay our monthly payment. They don't give a dang about the interest." I've literally heard people say, at the end of the day, "Hey, I'm gonna live on this credit card. Then when I die, what's gonna happen?" You have the other side of that is families that believe in, hey, if you can't pay for it with cash, if you can't pay it off, that's not for you. So, both mindsets obviously affect how you're going to grow up and how you're going to be when you become an adult.
Yeah, so we think it starts in the home and the upbringing with the family and racial, cultural things all play a part in that, right?
Yeah, like we said, I think you grow up and you either continue the cycle or you break away from the cycle and you start your own cycle.
Yep.
Yeah. And we keep throwing out, culture. And I think, again, we have a large Hispanic culture. We have a large Burmese culture, African Americans. There's issues with trust of institutions, of banks. So when you're talking about, savings and finance, they keep a lot of stuff in their house, in the community, just because historically, if you look back, especially, from an African American perspective, you look back, they hadn't had good dealings with the banking industry, so.
Yeah. What I find interesting, I was listening to a podcast recently where they're kind of breaking down the racial or ethnic different kind of groups and just the mindsets that they have when it comes to money. And I think, if I remember correctly, Indian, right? Indian is the wealthiest ethnic in the U.S., I think, culturally wise. But they looked at how they view money, right? When they come over here, what do they do with their money? You see them out there buying flashy cars, clothes, things like that. They're investing, investing in businesses, hotels, gas stations, things like that. They also, especially the Asian community, also, a lot of them, they stay together when it comes to living, right? So they're not moving out of the house. They're pooling all their money together to use that to invest, to kind of build generational wealth like that.
And
Right?
oops, sorry. Just one short thing, and I do think that that is a cultural influence. I think here in America, the ideology of independence has been drilled into a lot of people. Usually, you would hear, usually at the age of 18, it's time for you to move out of your parents' home. Why? I mean, as a teenager, if you are working and you are in college, you should be at home with your parents, building money, building wealth, getting your ducks in a row before you're ready to move out. If you're moving out and you don't have a stable income, you don't have a job, you don't have an education, you're not going to get that far in life unless you're getting handouts. I do notice that. Look, well, I will see Hispanic and like Indian, Asian people all living in the same household. Okay, now that reduces the amount of bills that one person has to pay. Yes, there is less space, but at the end of the day, you are saving more money. At the end of the day, it's going to take you a fraction of the time to save up maybe $10,000 than it would somebody trying to live on their own, pay all their bills, and save at the same
You can
time.
afford a bigger house with more space, more room. You don't need to make $200,000-$300,000 a year because you got 3-4 people in the family that are working, right?
correct.
To build that, but it also comes down to like what we value as well. I don't know if this is true or not, but thinking about how us here in America are so fascinated with name brands and the cars and having fancy cars and all this stuff, where you got a fancy car but you haven't even bought a house yet, right? Comes down to priorities with the money. I don't know if that's culturally from where they come from, that stuff doesn't matter there. That'd be my guess. But
I think it's everyone's unique life experience, because everyone has their own unique life story, especially financially, depending on how we all grew up. We all grew up in different households, and within those households, there are certain experiences that we've had, economic experiences that we've had around. And I'm mainly like Terrence talked about a little bit of scarcity, seeing how our parents managed money, seeing how our relatives manage money. The environment that we grow in can shape us who we become in the future, due to the fact that we are around a certain school or a certain people. It's a community, and we're breeding off from each other. We're learning off from each other. We're creating a way of life from each other. And so one example that I would like to use would be, like, I remember I had a close friend of mine back home, really grew up in a lot of scarcity, where he went through scholarships. He ended up becoming a key executive, made a lot of money, but really had a very tight budget. Like, this guy did not spend more than a particular amount a day, because that's what he was always around. You went to his apartment, all you found was one couch and something. He lived a minimalist life. And so we got to talk about, how, like, why does, like, salaries and things like that. He makes so much, but he always lived off that fear of not doing this. And, part of my experience in finance would be, just as we're sharing, would be, what are you investing on? What are you doing with money? Is the gentleman felt safe to just have money in savings account, because that's all he knew. And it made him feel comfortable. He didn't buy clothes. He didn't buy shoes. He didn't buy, a lot of things. He just felt comfortable by having that safety net, because all he could relate to was just that moment where he had nothing. And so, as we're all having our own unique life experiences and just asking ourselves how we are shaped up from it, is, as we become adults, we got to take a moment and sit and just analyze how we grew up, how our parents related with money, conversations around money and what that made us, and what that shaped us to be. And then figure out a way to really ask ourselves, is this serving us better as individuals? Is there a moment where we can evolve a little bit and learn more from it? And then more strategize on how we can move away from that.
So it sounds like we were all kind of blessed with strong financial background households, things like that, to kind of influence us. But obviously not everybody's blessed with that.
Yeah.
So what advice do we have for those out there that don't come from that? Like, how do you change your situation? How do you change your mindset?
Well, just in listening to everything that we talked about, Terrence hit on gratification, instant gratification, delayed gratification. And you're talking about your buddy, how he saved money. There is value and admiration in somebody that you have a parent that's in your household that's going to work every day that, hey, mom, can we take the spring break trip? Hey, we can't afford it this year, but hey, we're going to work and we're going to save up for it and we'll go next year. So when you see parents that, they may not even verbalize that, but you as a young person, if you look and you see your parents going to work every day and coming back, and you may not get something that first time you ask, but you're saving and you're working for it, that's a powerful message. You're teaching that, hey, we want to do something, we're going to earn our money, we're going to save up for it, and then that's where the reward comes in at.
And I do think that a scarcity mindset can be a big help in terms of future financial endeavors. Because when you are in a situation where you're either getting just enough or not enough to survive, that shapes your mind, because when it allows you to tell yourself no. So like if you know for a fact you can't afford something or you can't get it, you can look at it and tell yourself no. But if you're always in a position where I believe you're able to just go say yes to everything, like, oh, well, I have it, I can go buy it, I can go buy it, I can go buy it. When you are put in a position where something changes, because we're all one disaster away from everything being flipped upside down. When that happens, how are you supposed to adjust your lifestyle to that if the only thing you've known is getting everything that you wanted when you wanted it? Mm-hmm. When you go through an experience where you have to tell yourself no, or you have to go without, or you have to make sacrifices, I feel it's easier for you to make harder decisions in terms of finances as well too.
Mm. I think a lot of us, what keeps people down financially or impoverished is they don't have the sense to say no to things, right? They just see the brand names, they see the luxury, they see that, and they're going to go get it by any means, right? They're not thinking about the long term there. And actually, now I say that, I think that's probably what it comes down to is, are you thinking long-term strategy-wise, or are you thinking short-term strategy-wise? Would you say most people in financial struggles, are they thinking long-term, or are they thinking short-term?
They're thinking, what can I do to get through the day?
Yep. There's a healthy mixture. Yeah. I would definitely say there's a healthy mixture.
So, I mean, honestly, there are people, I mean, there's a shortcoming regardless. My income that I make does not match these bills. Mm-hmm. So when people talk about investors and things of that nature, that's not realistic to them. Yeah. That's what we have to understand. Like, that's what I say. There's nothing across the board. They're in survival mode. Survival mode does not equate to, hey, my life insurance or where I'm going to invest. No, it's how can I get through this day? And then you throw in the fact there might be a lack of education there. So, I mean, ain't like you can up and jump and go to college because, I mean, your path has been set. Mm-hmm. So you're in survival mode. So,
yep. So racial, cultural, what about age? Age make a difference in?
Age makes a huge difference.
Yeah, I know the answer for us.
1,000. Yes, 1,000%. We all are in different age groups, of course. The way that finances were handled when you guys were children, it's completely different from how it's handled now. I'm trying not to call anybody old. But like, we do have those clients that come in and they'll tell you, oh, I remember when you guys introduced debit cards, or I remember when you introduced the ATM machines or the online banking. And like, I'm looking at them like, how did you navigate the world? Like, I understand technology is a big help. Oh. But at the end of the day, banking back then was just nothing but paperwork and a bunch of paperwork. But also,
that was as recently as like the early 2000s.
Right. And if you
travel
back in time, there were specific groups of people that weren't even allowed in the banking industry as far as working or even owning accounts. So when society puts blockades from you getting the financial knowledge that you need to make healthy financial decisions, you are left alone. Mm-hmm. And then you have to turn to other people to potentially get answers that you're unable to get answers for. And again, now that I think about it, that has either helped people or it has hindered people. There are people that weren't able to get into banks and they've lived their lives without going to banks and they still find a way to make it out. And then there's those people that have had banking relationships and still make terrible decisions, but do have that leg up that other people didn't have in terms of understanding how banks work.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking when I say age, more or less, priorities, what matters. I mean, I can tell you now my early 20s, the things I spent my money on or that mattered then, or I could care less about at this point in time in my life. The older you get, you start prioritizing things. When you have kids, it makes a huge difference, with what you're prioritizing things for.
The other part about that, when you get older, the things that you can afford, it's like, bro, I wish I had money to do this when I was 25. You know what I'd have been doing, So it definitely makes a
So I always
difference.
say, like, I wish I had the money in my early 20s to travel, like, now, but I'm kind of restricted with the kids now. Like, I got to go everywhere. Now I got to pay for 5 plane tickets instead of 1.
Yeah.
Right? If I did that, I would have traveled a lot more if I had the money when I was younger.
That's true. And I think we get to a certain age where everybody kind of asks themselves in terms of like, how did that experience growing up financially affect me? And also create their own stories. I'm very big on evolving and moving on from whatever life experiences we all might have got into and choosing to strive to become better. Yes, I understand there are certain things that we particularly might have gone through, certain blockages, but this is 2026. We got to get to a moment where we move on. We got to get to a moment where we take accountability. We got to get to a moment where we say, this is Ben. I need to be better. I need to become better. And that's what I'm going to present to the world. Because if I go out to the world as Ben, who's less confident, Ben who feels not good enough because back in the day I was treated as not good enough, or as Ben who doesn't feel as good enough because I grew up in a certain environment that makes me, when I get to a certain area, that I'm not good enough. We got to get to a point where we move on and we take accountability and we create our own stories. And what that looks like is empowering ourselves. Read books, find mentors, influence yourself in a positive direction, take ownership of your life, move on and go out there and get it, and don't let anything stop you, and create your own story in a way that it's only your story and you can evolve from it and influence others. And I also particularly want to talk to firstborns who are in their families, because you can grow up in a family, and I'm sharing this because I'm a firstborn. Firstborns also carry a big responsibilities when it comes to influencing their younger brothers and sisters, because for instance, if you become the first person to go to college, and now you're going to college and you're evolving in a way that, well, your parent may not have evolved in that way. And so as you're going to school and you're learning things, I would say take that back home and influence your younger brother and your sister and your cousins in a way that they get to learn and change also.
Yeah.
So what do you say? Hold on a second. What do you say to Ben that just don't know any better? Ben that has never been taught. Ben that was the firstborn to somebody I didn't know. My dad, my mom was out in the streets. What do you say to that, Ben? What do I read about? I don't know. If I don't know, how do you reach that person?
That's a difficult place to be in, and I can all be empathetic on that. But I always say, as we becoming at a certain age and we're taking responsibility of our own lives, we all create our own unique stories based on how that looks like. And so, for instance, if you get to a point where you say, I want to become better, however that better looks like. Better could be moving to a better apartment, or better could be moving out. What are you learning from that? And always putting yourself in a position where you're learning. You're picking up a book that you can learn and evolve from. You're finding positive influences of which you can learn from. Success can mean so different. Means different for all of us. The things that you could look and say success. Whatever success looks like to each and one of us, that's what I would strive us to go forward for. And wake up and evolve and learn and go away from that, because we become who we present ourselves in the society, right? If I go out there in the world and I'm not, and I get it, there has to be some form of vulnerability where you say, I don't know this. And I believe if you're around a positive environment or around positive friends, around people who you can learn from, your village, they'll teach you how to do that. There's certain things that we all learn from one another while we're sitting here. We have different mindsets, and we get to learn each other. We get to learn from each other based on those aspects. And so, as we're really becoming, as we're aging, we tend to have more responsibilities. As we're aging, we get to create our own life stories. As we're aging, our priorities change. So, for instance, the person who was 20 years old differs from the person who's 30 years old because they have a responsibility. The person who wakes up today and gets married, they invite a spouse in their family, and they're trying to create that village. That person also becomes a way of influence. And along those lines, there's a way of opening up and being vulnerable and saying, this is my trauma, this is my experience with money, this is what I don't know, and being open to learn from each other. Because the moment you open up and say, hey, wait a minute, I want to know about this, but I don't know how to get there, we all love to help each other. Somebody will speak up and say, hey, what have you ever thought about this? Or you wake up and define your own success and say, maybe by end of this year, I want to learn something to do with finance, and taking the initiative to get there and utilizing online resources, finding mentors out there who can help. That's one thing that we can do to influence. So I would say, provided there's a will, you can always create your own way. And so if you strive to become better and you don't know how to, I would say figure out a way to learn about it. As much as I'm very empathetic, would be try to find positive influences around. If it's a community, if it's a church, if it's a mosque, where you can go and ask for like a mentor, that person can lead to you. And that mentor has to also be somebody who is willing to be open and learn from, and say, and say, I don't know, when they don't know. But there's always a way to learn. And as we're learning things, and as we're teaching ourselves things, we get to pass that around to people around us, our friends, and things of that nature. But I always say, always create a positive village. Always create a village of people, a village around people that kind of reflect on who you want to become. If you're getting married, marry somebody with values that reflect the person that you want to become, because that person becomes a part of your household.
I did want to say something. I know we are running short on time here. Just last bit of reassurance, of course, if you do feel like you are lost and you don't know what to do, by all means, give yourself some grace.
Mm-hmm.
There is nothing wrong with not knowing what to do. As Ben has been reiterating, there are always groups of people out there that are available for you. Online resources, go to your public libraries, ask librarians, ask friends, families, find mentors, take steps. Just make sure that you do have a plan to put in place to get where you want to be.
Awesome. I don't have anything to add to that. It was a great takeout for that. So great conversation today, gentlemen. Glad I was just playing a joke on you earlier today. And
yeah, you got it.
And thank you so much for your time today here, Ryan.
Yes. JJ, anything to take us out with? Any going
Nothing,
on?
man. You had me shook. I'm like, okay, now who am I putting the seat over here?
You didn't want to take over another host?
I got to reevaluate here. Who am I putting the seat over there? Terrence is about to become the new host.
Yeah.
All kind of stuff. You got
I'm
me.
going
That
to
was
be
good.
so aware today, because
Yeah,
now you
that
got
was
me.
good.
And the funny thing is, my team started, like my colleagues started playing games yesterday, just trying to joke around. And I told myself I'm going to be on it today, but I wasn't prepared. So yeah, you got me.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't sure if you guys would be prepared or not. I was just looking at the facial
I was like, I don't know. Like, I see the hoodie.
They believe in it. They're not believing it.
No, as I walked in, Jim is sitting out there, and I'm thinking, well, Jim seemed happy. Everyone seems happy. What's going on? What did I miss?
That's it. Hey, this is Final Four weekend, though. Who you got?
Arizona, simply because that's who I picked in my brackets.
Okay. Ooh, they got Michigan, so a lot of people think that's a championship game.
Yeah.
What about you guys? Y'all been keeping up? Who you got? Look at Terrence. All right.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I'm the bookworm of the group. Sorry.
Me too. Nothing about sports.
We're
Outside
the only
soccer.
sports guys.
Yeah.
Soccer only.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go.
What about you?
I'm going. I like what people say. Michigan and Arizona are the two best teams.
That's what I thought was interesting. Playing the Final Four instead of the championship game. But
yeah. So, but I'm going. Yeah, I'm gonna take the Wolverines.
Yeah.
So, but I do like Arizona.
My team's North Carolina. They were out in the first round, and coach lost the job due to it. So I was the rest of the tournament. I just didn't care as long as it's not UConn or Duke. So
There you go.
yeah. But all right, gentlemen. Thank you. We'll be back to talk with you in 2 weeks. Until then, we are our Neutral Voices. Peace.